Hello and welcome to another episode of the SEQTEK podcast. I'm Ken Williamson. My co-host Matt is not here today. He had some family obligations, but I'm joined by my guest, Jason Knight. Jason, how are you doing? Pleasure to have you.
Thank you. I'm doing well, and the pleasure is mine.
All right. Well, let's just get into it. I want to start off, and maybe you could just tell a little bit about your IT journey and what you've been doing and what you're passionate about.
Yeah, so let's see. My IT journey probably started in high school when I took a C++ programming course. BJ Hoffman helped me figure out when I was getting into an infinite loop. Then I went off to college and went to the University of Tulsa to study computer science. And towards the end of that, graduated in 2007, started programming around town for a number of years, I think until about 2012 or so. And then I started getting burned out, actually. I was kind of done. It's the startup life can be hard on you. I'm sure you all know.
Yeah.
But I had the good fortune to start working at a company called OpenLink, now called something else. I forget what. And they said, hey, we're trying this new thing called Scrum. It's a team-based approach, iterative development. We're going to send you to some training courses put on by scrum.org. And light bulbs just started going off. I thought, oh my goodness, this is what I've been missing. This way of working seems way more effectual. It connects me with the meaning of the work. And in short, it kind of saved me from going and executing my secondary business plan, which was mowing lawns and doing landscaping work, starting a business doing that. So from then on, I really fell hard for it. I went down the rabbit hole a long way. Found a full-time Scrum Master job in 2014 with a company called Vitals. Now I think it's called Sapphire Digital or Zealous or something else. Developed my skills as an Agile coach. I got really into Toyota Production System, learning about lean thinking and waste reduction and root cause analysis, solving problems for real, not just at the fruit level or the leaf level. Got into organizational coaching a little bit, took some of those courses and tried to apply that skill at the organizational level, even a little bit of executive coaching for an executive who wanted it. And then in 2019, I thought, I think maybe my time at that startup is concluded, so I went over to work at Bank of Oklahoma, who were advertising for Scrum Master position. They had immediate needs. I went into their mortgage department, helped them figure out how to automate the product they were building and get the delivery automated, and taught them about extreme programming, some test-driven development techniques. And then there was an opportunity inside the bank to move over to the Salesforce development area, which is where I met Chris Barba, Dan Underwood, and a few others. And the challenge there was, how can we take this large team of people, something like 25 to 30 people, and continue to develop in an iterative way, preserving agility in the way we do it. And that requires a bit of scaling know-how, so I was able to apply what I knew at the time. I think we got up to, at one point, 5 teams, including, I think, Deloitte was one of our teams. And then we implemented a scaling method called Nexus, which is from scrum.org. Very lightweight, very nice. And then we were so successful with doing that. I think Chris probably mentioned a few things in terms of the throughput. We were able to improve in the quality of our output. We were able to say goodbye to Deloitte and then took it on as a purely internal product development process. So from there, I was there at the bank for almost 4.5 years, and I was being recruited by some people from Community Care of Oklahoma. They said, you really like it working over here, we've got work for you to do, and so I, on April 15th, moved over there. So it's been a very recent change for me to now working for Community Care.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but one thing I had seen your post on LinkedIn about I'm 2 weeks old today, and
Yes.
and I thought that was a really insightful post. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that and about how you're approaching this new position?
Absolutely. Let's see if I can remember what I wrote 2 weeks ago. I met a guy in the elevator, and he said, "I'm 2 weeks old today," meaning he'd been at his job for 2 weeks. And I realized, coincidentally, strangely, that I had been as well. And I realized that I knew almost nothing about this organization or the people in it. So in coaching, we think about organizations as systems. And systems thinking, the kind of which W. Edwards Deming talks a lot about, that's what I mean by system. And I realized I didn't know this system at all. I was an infant. But on the other hand, I have decades of experience building software products and delivering software products, coaching teams, coaching organizations. That I'm not an infant there. In fact, I even have responsibility to use that knowledge and experience productively, even according to calling. I think I have an obligation to the calling, so I can't claim infancy there. I have a responsibility to fulfill. And the blog post sort of goes through what I don't know at all, what I think I know somewhat, and then what I'm absolutely sure of and confident of. And the only thing I think in my 40 years on the planet that I'm absolutely confident in is that Jesus Christ has accomplished all the work that I need for righteousness, and that I rely on him for that assurance and for the source of my calling. So that was it, kind of short and sweet.
Yeah, no, amen. That's good. So, backing up to what you had said, you had mentioned that you kind of got into the Scrum Master side of Agile. Mm-hmm. And this is something that it feels like to me is a little bit underappreciated, and especially in a lot of organizations. Here on this podcast, we've talked to software devs and Scrum for devs, and we've also talked to some product owners and really explored that. But we really haven't talked to any Scrum Masters. And just my experience has been that the value proposition to sell the idea that you need this role is a little bit harder to quantify for somebody that's on the business side, executive level. So do you want to talk a little bit about what a Scrum Master does, Sure. how that fits in, and then what the value proposition is?
Absolutely. So I have found it difficult in the past to make the value proposition for the Scrum Master role as well. So I've thought a good deal about it. And I would say you need a Scrum Master for the same reason you would need a sheepdog. There are other reasons, but that's an analogy that works for me. You've got people who have to have focus, and their focus must be protected. And those people are the people actually building the software and actually delivering the software. So many things compete for their time and their focus. And if no one else, someone needs to be saying, this is what the most valuable work is, or at least this is the hypothesis we have for what the most valuable work is. I'm going to give you what you need, create the environment you need to succeed and deliver it. And let's test that hypothesis. I think the problem with that value proposition can be sometimes, well, I will hire a manager, like a team lead or an IT team manager, to fulfill that role. And I think that those people can do it. I think they would be well advised to develop some coaching skills. However, they may not know anything about the Scrum framework, what holds it together, why the principles are important. They may have to go out and get some experience, not just can I recite the Scrum Guide chapter and verse, but have I actually tried to apply them? Have I coached people to get better in them? Have I coached the organization about how to deal and interact with the Scrum teams? That kind of experience goes into the change agent skill set. And I don't think most managers of people have that sort of experience or training. If they do, I would say they're on the rare side of things. So that's what I would say. When you invite a Scrum Master into your team, you should be, according to what it's supposed to be, inviting a change agent into your flock and expecting them to not only teach you how to develop your product with agility, but how to deliver it confidently with quality, and how to establish new ways of working that ensure you're constantly picking the highest value bets to make, and learning how to work well with one another according to the Scrum values. There's a lot there.
Yeah, yeah, there is, and I'm glad to hear that it's not just me that's found it difficult to explain exactly. And one of the things you mentioned, which I really agree with, is that you have to be able to protect the developer's focus, because the reality is that there is so much that goes into delivering software, and a lot of it is outside the control of the dev team. You're interacting with vendors, you're interacting maybe with other departments, and like the in my view, the Scrum Master role is a very facilitator like role, where what I'm trying to do is to say, okay, I know that you have this dependency on this thing that you can't control. Hand that off to me and focus on what you can control, your own work, right? And then I will be, as the Scrum Master, will be the person that's going to keep running this down and make sure that it's delivered to you when you need it, right? And so then it just really it really takes a lot of the distractions out of their field of view. They can just totally. So I think that's great. But then now you're kind of into a more of a project management side role. And so, what was that transition like? What are you using what you learned?
Yes.
How does that work?
What was the transition like for me, developer to Scrum Master?
Yeah. And then now to project manager.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to say I don't know yet. I've been 3 weeks on the job in this new role, and I can tell you that IT project manager is not a well-defined concept at Community Care yet. We're essentially just doing our best to pay attention to as much as possible and keep multiple efforts moving. So I don't know that I've learned too much about the difference between that role's description and Scrum Master yet. But I have thought a lot and reflected a lot on developer to Scrum Master. The developer is in charge of ensuring that things are completed successfully and with high quality. Essentially, that as much as you can, you don't fail at delivering an increment of usable software. I may not do what you expect, but that's learning, and you try to minimize the risk by keeping that increment small. The Scrum Master, as coach, may need to strategically allow failure for learning to occur. When I originally started inhabiting that Scrum Master accountability, my then manager said, "You're going to have to share both roles, developer and Scrum Master. We don't have the budget or the buy-in to have a full-time Scrum Master role." So it was really hard to do both. Do I let it fail as the coach and coach learning, or do I make sure it doesn't fail as the developer? So I found that very difficult to sort of manage the expectations. Plus, my teammates needed to know how they could count on me. Can I count on you to not let this drop? Are you the developer today or the Scrum Master? That was a difficult transition. But I had already started transitioning in my focus. How do I put this? There's an assessment called was it 6 Areas of Working Genius, I think, from the Table Group. It's Patrick Lencioni's group. My working genius describes me as sort of the glue that holds people together, focuses them. If they're having problems, I figure out why the problems are happening and I alleviate them. I was already doing that work probably since my first job. I got the nickname Team Glue at that point. I think a good Scrum Master, a good coach can figure that out, can say things like, I see how we're working together and I see why it's having problems and what we can do. I can suggest a way for us to improve. I had already been doing that intuitively. It's the person who does the work no one wants to do, but it needs to be done, and then finds a way to automate it so no one has to deal with it or it becomes part of our standard of quality. So I was already doing that. That transition was very easy. Once I transitioned to a full-time Scrum Master role, I found it actually a little difficult because I couldn't tell people what I was doing all day. It was different each day. It was a moment of vulnerability when I realized both that I couldn't account for my time like I had used to do as a developer, and also that if I do my job really, really well, people don't need me. Ouch.
Yeah.
So that was part of what that transition was like for me, but it's really sort of like when you solve lower order problems, you get to tackle higher order problems. So if you teach a team how to follow the basics of the Scrum framework, they can deliver quality product and they can test their assumptions by working software that's usable by users. That's a learning cycle they didn't have before, and that really accelerates their learning and their delivery to production and their value delivery. Okay, what do you do after that? Well, you have to coach the organization on how to innovate on that knowledge. There's a great framework out there that James Shore and Diana Larson are involved with called the Agile Fluency Model. And they describe this progression and focuses from focus on value delivery to focus on the actual delivery methods. So you can think of that as being sort of the end part of DevOps. And then beyond that, it goes into, I want to say it's something like strategic or innovation. Sorry, Diana, I'm getting it wrong. But you start to lead the market because you're so good at adapting and learning with your product. And then the last fluency after that is, now that you have figured out how to do something so well within your organization, you turn outward to the other parts of your organization. You begin to teach them how to do the same thing. So I found that the transition to Scrum Master, once I figured out how to get people coached up and doing the basics of the Scrum framework, I was able to move on to higher order problems like examining the system as a whole, creating value streams, and finding root causes, designing countermeasures, the whole plan, do, check, act method that Deming came up with. So anyway, it's ongoing, and with my current role as an IT project manager, I'm first trying to just get a handle on all of the moving parts. And then I can already see, okay, we're going to have a definition of done here, so I'm going to coach that up. And then after that, it's going to be how do we manage our backlog, at least make work visible in Jira, and then we'll go on to the next order problem.
Yeah, man, so many good points there. One that you brought up that I've seen a lot of is this idea that we don't have the budget for a full-time Scrum Master, so we're going to have kind of like a hybrid developer Scrum Master, or we're going to have a hybrid product owner Scrum Master, or we're going to have a project manager who's also the Scrum Master.
Yes.
And like what I've struggled with is trying to explain how that is a little bit counterproductive, because the roles, I don't want to say that they're in opposition to each other, but they are a little bit, right? It's like, you know, a developer is coming from one direction and the Scrum Master is coming from another direction. So if, and you said it perfectly when you were like, well, my team didn't know, do I have my Scrum Master hat on or do I have my developer hat on?
I actually had two hats that I would put on. One was like a big red plaid tartan cap, and that was my Scrum Master cap. They knew if I was in Scrum Master mode that day.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, I just think that that's such a great thing to bring up. And you know, you eventually transitioned to a full-time Scrum Master. Did you find it easier to fulfill that role when you didn't have these additional considerations of trying to be everything to everyone?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I did. Here's how it struck me tangibly. I looked at my schedule and Outlook, and there was nothing on it. Anybody know what that's like? Yeah. IT project managers, your schedule is, well, mine is, I'm sure everyone else is completely booked.
Yeah.
I'm 3 weeks on the job. Developers, you want that to be as open as possible, so you have big chunks of creative time. And with the Scrum Master, it was pretty dang open too. Because the Scrum Master, I think, remember that sheepdog analogy, if no one else, someone should be watching for threats. What's the threat? Oh, that was an interesting comment. I wonder if there's a problem relationally. Maybe I need to address that in a conversation. I notice that so-and-so is failing at their build is failing, or they're doing this really costly manual workaround. I'm going to spend some dedicated time digging into why that's occurring, have all the conversations I need to form a root cause analysis, and then propose a solution to the team, and do all of that work while the team is focused on delivering the product. So did I find it, what was your question, fulfilling or easy to transition with all that extra time? Was that it?
Yeah, I mean, something along those lines.
I found it deeply fulfilling to transition, how do I put this? Transition from a sort of role defined by attention to one kind of defined by intention. I got to be creative, solve problems with creativity rather than constantly reacting to work in progress, urgencies, keeping things from falling apart. That was hugely satisfying.
Yeah. So kind of going along with that, what would you say to a CTO or a director of development or someone like that when they want to say, well, we're wanting to be more agile, we want to do the Scrum framework, but we just don't have the budget for somebody that's a dedicated Scrum Master. Would you say that it's better to have somebody doing it part-time, or that you need to try to find that budget to make that? Like, I just want to talk a little bit more about like what happens to the team when people are fulfilling multiple roles.
Yeah, what I hear there is what happens to the team when, say, a developer is trying to fulfill the Scrum Master role. Well, if my experience is any indication, he'll probably be less good at both than he could otherwise be or she could otherwise be. I was confused. I wasn't as productive some days as a developer because I was sitting there thinking, what should I be doing right now? As the Scrum Master, my focus was split. Again, should I be coaching in a certain way for people to be, well, let me stop myself from talking out loud so much. If you're a CTO and you want a proof of concept, I think go for it, split a role, but have a hypothesis that you're trying to test. If I allow for our output to be lower for a time in order to prove out the potential benefit I think I see with having a Scrum Master, then do that and give that person a fixed length experimental window to endure the cognitive dissonance that comes with that. If you don't do that, I think if you're like me, you might think, oh no, how long is this going to go? Can I take it? All these questions distract you from actually performing the experiment with gusto and according to the precepts that you're testing. So I would say go ahead and do it, but try to make it you're testing the waters of an assumption. You've got a well-defined hypothesis. I think that our throughput's going to go up, or the time that we spend dealing with downtime is going to go down. Whatever it is, test it and then resume, see what you've learned, and make a decision. Because if that experiment is actually sort of set up to demonstrate valuable, we'll say cost savings for one, and those cost savings are significant enough to justify a new role, then go for it. You've proved your case. You can take that to your board and say, look, with this short-term experiment, we think we've proved out the case that we actually do have the money, do have the funds to justify a full-time position. Because if we do, then we're likely to see more of the same. If you don't have that kind of evidence, even qualitative evidence, I think that conversation is very hard.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's great advice. And that's a lot about what Agile is let's take a small chunk of work. Let's have a hypothesis. Let's do something, right?
Place your bets.
Right. Let's actually do something and not just talk about it.
Yeah.
Right. And then see what happens. And then being agile means, okay, are we going to keep going down this path? Are we going to pivot? That's what it means to be agile. So, I kind of want to transition to something that I've kind of been noticing in LinkedIn and whatnot, and that is that a lot of people, it seems like, are saying Agile is dead, Scrum is dead. We need to go back to waterfall, or whatever. What's your take on that? Like, I've worked in both, and I think both kind of have pros and cons to them. But I would love to hear what your take is on the current hype buzz, which is that the Agile experiment has failed or whatever.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this because I actually hoped we could talk about this today. I've been hearing the phrase Agile is dead for at least 10 years now. I think Dan North was the first to have a conference talk where he said, Agile is dead, long live Agile, right? This is a system effect, and the system is our industry or maybe our world as a whole. So I don't pretend to know what's causing it. I think it's far too complex for me to know. But here's what I speculate to think. I think that the need for rapid learning cycles and innovative, iterative development of products, the need for it is only going up, has only gone up. Agile methods like Scrum, Kanban, extreme programming, you name it, are ways to solve those complex problems. Chris talked about Cynefin last time. Complex problems. It is designed to solve those. Those are the kinds of problems we see proliferating. So is the cause of this, I'll call it a backlash, movement, whatever, is it because the need for these problem-solving methods is going down? I can confidently say no. So why the effect? I speculate that having seen so much confusion and poor implementation, and I'll say this, over-reliance on form, I think people are rightly calling out things like dogmatic, unthinking, cargo cult behavior. Mm-hmm. If I just have the events on my calendar that are in the Scrum framework, then I'll be agile. Well, no. And that sort of unthinking, robotic adherence to form rather than attention to the outcomes they're designed to give you has, I think, rightly put a lot of people in the industry into skeptical mode. Like, wait a minute, we spent a lot of money to put in place all of these new roles, all of these events, and all these things, and we're not seeing the kind of outcomes that they promise. So I think it's reason number one. Reason number two, this is even more speculation. I think as the adoption curve of modern software development principles and product management principles increases, that is, more people do it better, I think the need for a coach, like it's not the hot new thing anymore. It was certainly in the beginning of the 2000s. And it was the unknown new thing that only the really interesting, cool kids were doing in the 90s. So maybe part of the sensibilities that agile methods and frameworks were designed to reveal to us have now become part of our, of course. Like, of course, that's how you would do it. So maybe a person who tells you, well, this needs to be your new common sense, maybe that need for that is going down. I still think, so the lower order problems may be being solved out of the box more often, but there are still higher order problems that I think you need some role for. Maybe Scrum Master is the wrong role. I don't know. It's all speculation, man.
No, I think that's a really great answer. And I think that's really insightful, the idea that, you know, because fashion comes in cycles. Mm-hmm. And so, like you said, 20 years ago, it was fashionable to say we're going to start doing Scrum, right? But now so many people are doing it, and exactly along what the lines you said, so many people are doing it in a performative way rather than a functional way, right? And I think that is another big key, is that, you know, and what I think is a little bit ironic is that one of the key things about Scrum is people over processes, Agile, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're trying to say to yourself, well, I have all the Scrum artifacts on my calendar, you know, we're going through them in a performative way, right? But you're not seeing results, then, and you're like, well, but you're not taking that introspective piece seriously and saying, well, why isn't this working? You know, so I just think that those, I agree. It probably is speculation, and it's not something that we can readily gather data on, you know, because a lot of that information is in the minds distributed across many people. But
true. It may be actually useful for me to pull something up. Have you heard of Craig Larman before? He and Bas Vodi put together Large Scale Scrum. Less. And he has something called Larman's Laws of Organizations. Let's see if I can find it here very quickly. Here we go. Nope, I don't want ads. Here we go. CraigLarman.com. This will be it. I love Craig Larman. He's got a great talk on why component teams are a bad idea, and he breaks it down. I'll read just a couple of these, see if it makes the point. Organizations are implicitly optimized to avoid changing the status quo middle and first level manager and specialist positions and power structures. So an organization that's got structure, part of the reason that structure exists is to repel change and to provide stability. More on this if you go into Frederick Laloux's Reinventing Organizations. Different organizational structures have different pros and cons. As a corollary, any change initiative will be reduced to redefining or overloading the new terminology to mean basically the same as the status quo. So we're going to start doing Scrum, but we don't have a person who normally does the Scrum Mastery thing, so we'll make our PMs the new Scrum Masters, as an example. As another corollary, any change initiative will be derided as, get ready for it, purist, theoretical, revolutionary, religious, and needing pragmatic customization for local concerns, which deflects from addressing weaknesses and the manager specialist status quo. So in the best case scenario, when what you really do need is a reorganization of how you're developing and delivering a product, if that's truly what you need, best case scenario, right tool, right problem, the organization itself may still not know how to adapt to that change and will adapt, well, we'll say mutate in those ways.
Oh, I think that was great. And you kind of segue into something else I wanted to ask you about, especially in relationship to your current role. Chris, who we had on, talked a lot about the transition from project to product, which is I had been thinking about this for a long time, but he had put into words and had given me some resources that kind of made it real for me, and I'm pretty excited about it. And so I just wanted to hear a little bit about what your take is on this movement, as well as like challenges maybe that you're facing, because I know your title is project manager now, and so maybe talk a little bit about personal challenges that you're dealing with, along with the more high level abstract stuff.
Absolutely. So how do I start with this? The first order problem for any change agent is, I think, who is supporting your change efforts? And even though I'm not a change agent by title, I'm a change agent by nature, and that's why I was hired. So you have to have someone, I think, if you're a change agent, who says, we want you here, and we want you to help us change in these ways. And my boss is definitely wanting me here to bring these kinds of changes to the way we work and to agility and various other things. The project to product sort of shift is a shift, and I think Chris mentioned this, from managing outputs to placing bets at securing outcomes. And we have a theory that these particular outcomes are going to give us more of what we want in our business, whether it's revenue, cost reductions, employee satisfaction, whatever we say is value to us. Okay, so for my role right now, I'm in the I'm 2 weeks old here phase where I'm trying to take action where I can. I mentioned a few of them. We need to define done so that we can be transparent about what we're developing iteratively and get good feedback on that, and have transparent quality standards. First order problem has to be fixed, then we move on to the next. We've got and this is not specific to community care. A lot of people have this problem. We don't have a good method of balancing the intake with the output. So in a word or a phrase, portfolio management. What does the business need for us to do as an IT organization, and what's our capacity to fulfill it, to deliver it? In order to And there's always more to do than you have time, people, or other resources. By the way, if I say resource, I never mean a person. So just so you know, if I say resource, I mean, coal, timber, natural gas, or something like that, or money. So once we stabilize some elements of how we're delivering, that will shore up questions like how much can we get done in a certain amount of time, the output question. Well, we need to know something about that, and flow metrics are a good way to go here, I think. Once we know that, then we have to have something on the other side of the equation which says, well, what do our users or our customers need first? What's the most important problems? And we need to be able to say, to rank order the work, which is going to be always more than we can deliver, by what the most important things are. And then you need a coherent method for matching up the demand with the supply. So it is the economy of product development. If you don't have that, then it becomes, what kind of cachet do I have? Who owes me a favor? It's basically the political games no one wants to base your product development on because, well, hopefully obvious reasons. But then you've also got to be able to account for how you're spending your money and your people's time to people in leadership who can rightly ask you, why do you think you need more developers or a Scrum Master? Well, you need to be able to describe that. It's a bit of a meandering answer. I apologize.
No. That was really good. And yeah, I think this has all been really great. And I think though we're starting to come up to the end. Like it always goes so fast. Let's just, I'll just go ahead and open it up. If there's any other closing thoughts that you have about anything that we had talked about today.
I think if you are a Scrum Master today, or if you're a person who's trying to hire or manage or coach a Scrum Master, I think something that I'm coming to realize is that Scrum Master is not a career. Just like product owner isn't a career. Thank you, Melissa Perry, wherever you are. Product manager is a career. The role of Scrum Master is a role you perform on a team for a given time. However, what I'm exploring now is what is the role that makes sense for my skill sets and my calling? And in a phrase, my calling would be something like ensuring that the work that people do brings life to them and the organization and to society around them. So figuring out how to help people work efficiently with high quality output and be connected with the meaning of what they build and doing so in an efficient way. It's all kind of wrapped up into whatever this career change is.
Well, I just want to thank you so much. I thought there's very, very insightful answers and really a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much, Jason. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for watching, and join us again in 2 weeks for the next episode of the SEQTEK podcast. Thank you.